Hello, my name is Don Weiss and I'm presenting my ideas for change. This is idea number 5 and it's a thorny one. It has to do with the strongly negative impact of rent regulations, particularly in New York City and Los Angeles. How they negatively impact the ability for the cities to have money from a middle class population, and how they negatively impact the ability of the middle class to have a large inventory of apartments for them to choose from. I calculated that if rent stabilization ended in New York City would generate an additional $100 billion a year in revenue. The way I came up with that calculation is assuming that there are 1 million poor people in New York City who live in rent-regulated apartments, and that's probably a low number. And each person costs approximately $50,000 to take care of through the cost of social services, cost of housing, food, medicine, whatever. And each of those people were replaced by a middle-class person that generated $50,000 a year in revenue through payment of taxes and the flow of money. That difference of $100,000 times 1 million people is $100 billion a year. $100 billion a year would go a long way to satisfying a lot of people in terms of their desire to, in fact, end rent stabilization. It perhaps would allow for the elimination of personal income taxes in New York City. It might allow for a great reduction in corporate business taxes and property taxes. It certainly would allow for the city to stop its scandalous fining of individuals and businesses for minor infractions so that they can raise money. It would allow for the middle class to return to New York City. Rent stabilization has basically cemented in New York City's population base at its lowest socioeconomic level and does not allow change. We've abrogated our most basic contract law. A lease for an apartment between 2 consenting adults has been abrogated. When someone signed a lease on a rent-stabilized apartment, they have lifetime rights to that rental apartment. Who really expects lifetime rights to stay in a rental apartment? No one. What I suggest is what I call the Paris solution. It's my understanding that in Paris, tenants are given a 5-year lease with 1 step up that's negotiated between the parties. Certainly 5 years is a reasonable period of time for someone to live in a rental apartment and to feel they have some sense of security. The ending of rent stabilization would allow for a huge increase in supply of apartments in New York City for the middle class. Whole boroughs like the Bronx, which used to be middle class, are now inhabited by primarily poor people. And would it be immoral to allow the Bronx to become middle class again? I know there are many people who are protected by the rent stabilization law and would be outraged by any change, but the truth of the matter is that it would have a tremendous beneficial effect on New York City and New York State and for the middle class of New York. And the same problem exists in Los Angeles, although it's not quite as pronounced because Los Angeles is not really a city of renters. But the entire area that surrounds downtown Los Angeles, which was middle class at one time, when the population moved to the west, again it was taken over by a lower income group of people. And in Los Angeles also renters virtually have lifetime rights to stay in their rental apartments. So the issue is a thorny one, it's a complicated one, but it's one that I think should be addressed and should be explored because the impact of change is so dramatic. You can find my ideas on YouTube, channel DSW Ideas for Change. My email address is info@dswideasforchange.com. Please review the others. Thank you.